human beings mislead because we talk. Animals that don't talk and babies that don't talk don't mislead. If you're a human primate, you're an asshole somewhere to someone. That's who we are.
In this episode of the Men's Therapy Podcast,
we're joined by Dr. Stan Tatkin,
the pioneering creator of PACT and best-selling author of Wired for Love.
Learn how to navigate the human condition.
From reading micro expressions to surviving the biological forces that sabotage intimacy.
Nature is only concerned with continuation of the species and survival. Has no plan for relationship. Doesn't care. We do. We already start off not believing anybody, not because we're paranoid. We know that people are always protecting their interests. Most everything we do isn't actually personal. It just feels personal. Most couples do not do this. They don't think in these. They don't design their own relationship. They're operating under their own fantasies and ideas of what a relationship should be, which could cause a big problem. Love doesn't sustain. Emotion doesn't sustain. In fact, emotion causes trouble. When it comes to acting badly, we relegate everything new to old, and we automate it, including our partners. We're naturally selfish and self-centered, naturally opportunistic. We're all aggressive if we're threatened. It's the idea you can be right or you can be in a relationship. What we do is, I'm right, you're wrong. My reality is correct, yours is not. And this is the hill we die on, then we lose our relationships. We regret them on our deathbed. If you want a great life together, build it. This is not about either of you changing who you are, that you don't get into a relationship that you change. It's simply changing how you do business. Respect the idea of governance and do not mess with it, because your lives are at stake. I have to make sure you don't lose, just like I have to make sure I won't lose. So how do we both win?
Are there neurobiological differences between men and women, like in the most up-to-date literature? Are we different? And if so, how? Hello, and welcome back to the Men's Therapy Podcast. I'm your host, Marc Azoulay, and I'm here with Dr. Stan Tatkin. He is the creator of PACT, which is a psychobiological approach to couples therapy, which is one of the big ones, folks. So it's really great to have him on and talk about his approach. He also is the author of Wired for Love. You may have heard of that book. It's certainly his most well-known. And his most recent book is In Each Other's Care. So we'll be talking about some of the content in both of those books as well. So buckle up. You're in for a treat. If you want to work on your relationship, whether it's going well or going not so well, Dr. Tatkin is the guy. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mark. It's good to see you.
So I've been excited for this episode. I'm curious if you could just explain right off the bat what PACT is, and what differentiates it from other couples modalities.
We're a polytheoretical approach. We take psychobiology, which is the study of infant brain development and brain development throughout the lifespan, the autonomic nervous system, its role in development, and attachment, both infant and adult attachment. But there's more. So we are very strategic, very neurobiological in our approach. And we use certain methods like digital frame analysis to play back under stress. Couples can see what their faces are doing, what their bodies are doing. We're really dealing with the human condition. We see a couple work as more like training for a sport. It's a two-person system, a team that has to work under increasing amount of stress and distress while remaining collaborative and cooperative. Because people will say to me and to my colleagues, when we're good, we're really good. And so that's everybody. I want you to be really good when everything sucks.
Yeah, what I really liked when I learned about it in school was that micro expression and that kind of nonverbal component. I wonder if you could share a little bit more about that with our listeners.
Well, microexpression is a term that comes from great Paul Ekman, who was a mentor of mine. And take it or leave it, there's some controversy about the 7 different facial expressions. But that aside, we train to read faces and body movements that are hard to see, that go by in a fraction of a second. And we're constantly scanning both partners up and down, left and right, to catch really people in the act of being themselves. And so if we didn't see it, it didn't happen. So we pay a lot of attention to somatic cues, implicit cues that are coming through the body, the voice, heart rate, blood pressure. We see skin color changes with blood flow. striated muscle movement, tightness, and holding, breathing, everything to see what people are really doing and what's really going on, because narratives tend to lie.
Yeah, 100%. And I hear this from a lot of my clients that have, talk about failed couples counseling, is that they feel like, them and their partner were just putting on a show, right? Whether it's they're playing Judge Judy and trying to be right, or they're trying to put their best foot forward and they're not talking about what's really going on, right? Like there's a sense of being watched and being evaluated in couples therapy that I think really gets in the way. So it sounds like, your model really goes underneath that, right? Tries to crack it wide open.
We already start off not believing anybody, not because we're paranoid, not because we're accusing them of anything, but we know that people are always protecting their interests, and nobody wants to lose anything. And so we're constantly paying attention to that in couple and individual therapy, but particularly in couple therapy, because I want to make sure I don't get into trouble. I don't end up losing my relationship. I don't lose whatever. And so people are naturally going to change what they say. We already know that. So we're watching what people actually do, and we're looking for patterns as if we were actually observing animals instead of animals who talk. We know that human beings mislead because we talk. Animals that don't talk and babies that don't talk don't mislead. They're easier to study and to treat. Human beings mislead with their talk. And so we already know that, and therefore this is a discipline for therapists to be rigorous investigators to get the best version of the truth at every time, and then also to pay very, very close attention to the forces that push us all around. If you're a human primate, we're naturally easily threatened, and our threat system is always on. And that's one of the major concerns in all partnerships, is the triggering of threat cues, threat memory, and the accumulation of that, which leads to dissolution of that relationship. So, yeah, so we're really big on that. And again, it's very nerdy science stuff, but I found in my research that most everything we do isn't actually personal. It just feels personal. That we're all being pushed around by internal forces that is part of nature, our nature. And we're also up against nature writ large, as nature is only concerned with continuation of the species and survival. Has no plan for relationship, doesn't care. We do.
Self-replication and self-preservation.
That's it. Boy, does that come alive the moment I'm in a bad mood.
What does a typical PACT session look like? For someone that might be considering starting it, like how does all this stuff translate in the real world?
It's a good question. Long ago, we decided to change the furniture, to put us all on rolling chairs. And there's more specifics to that. The reason for the rolling chairs, we want to see micro movements. We want to see where people start the session, where they move the chairs, whether they go up or down in height, where they are vis-a-vis me. Gives me a chance to move and change my state of mind by being in a different position. So we know that that state is altered by our position, our vantage point. If we move it, we shift our state. So I'm able to actually do more being able to move than if we were in static furniture. In fact, most of us that have done this using that equipment wonder why anybody would do anything other than that. Allowing people to turn away, allowing people to move back if they feel they need to do so, or forward. So that's one of those things. We videotape every session. That's part of every session. And we'll play back discreetly things that we want them to see, because seeing and hearing is believing. We do a lot of games, exercises, tasks, because we're trying to see how the couple performs when one or both is under stress. And so we will increase the stress because we want them to be really good at surviving as a team, really good at handling crises, problems that they need to solve, decisions they need to make. And most couples do not do this. They don't think in teams. I don't know what most people are thinking in couples. It's all over the map. They don't design their own relationship. We insist that they're the inventors of the relationship. First, they have to come up with a structure, a design. Who are we? Why are we? How are we going to protect each other from each other? You tell people to plan for your devils, not your angels. They're devils we are when the conditions are so. And that's what's really important. So we put a lot of emphasis on social contract theory and the idea of governance with permission. So we give each other by agreement permission to govern each other as a way to stay safe, as a way to keep each other from doing harmful things, as a way to make sure we're doing what we decided we are going to do based on what we believe is good or best or the right thing to do. We decide, nobody else. And so it's a self-designed architecture that should be bespoke to both individuals. Otherwise, what's so good about pair bonding and unionizing with someone if you're pointing in two different directions and you are operating under a different sense of purpose? Right? That won't work.
I really like that you bring this up because, and listeners, I just wanted to just like talk to you directly. Couples counseling doesn't have to be just going in and complaining about the fight of the week. I think like what Dr. Tatkin, like what you're saying is this is a completely different thing. Like this is, you got videotaping, you're looking at micro expressions, you're putting the couple under stress and seeing how they respond. Like this is a totally different thing. This is not just like complaining in front of a counselor.
Complaining actually is again, there are forces that we're all dealing with. People think they're special. People think it's him or it's her, it's you, or it's me. And it actually isn't. It's all of us. That we're naturally selfish and self-centered, naturally opportunistic, naturally moody and fickle, naturally easily influenced by groups, naturally xenophobic and racist, naturally. We're all of these things, warlike, aggressive, if we're threatened. And so people don't understand, they're not prepared to deal with the human condition that is in them and in the person that they want to be teamed up with. And hopefully they're going to make agreements that nobody else will make, such as we keep each other absolutely safe and secure at all times by agreement and permission to enforce. We ensure each other's happiness in the relationship, which is something people can do by design, by agreement. So partners start to see this as a two-person psychological system of we and us. It's not codependent, because codependent means I'm getting something and I'm not returning it. You're hoping I will return it. You're hoping I will someday give you what you need, right? No, this is two adults coming together based on terms and conditions, deal or no deal. Not love, because love doesn't sustain. Emotion doesn't sustain. In fact, emotion causes trouble when it comes to acting badly. And so we're doing what the rest of the world does when they unionize. We have to have a shared sense of why we're doing this. What's the point of us? Who or what do we serve? And who are we? Are we two bosses, two executives? Are you the executive and I'm the employee? It can be anything people want. They just have to agree and be honest about it. And so this is basically what other unions in the world do. Only couples don't.
Yeah. Yeah. When I like the way you're framing it, and something I talk about with the people I work with, it's like the business of being in a relationship, right? Or the business of running a family, like you're starting an entrepreneurship venture together, and just like you're saying, I think like love and passion, in some ways, even sexuality, intimacy, they don't sustain. I mean, they're there and they're wonderful and they create attraction, but it's more like, how do we actually do day-to-day life?
How do you earn love, earn respect, earn trust? That is by deed. That is by principle that's centered in purpose, right? We do it regardless of how we feel, which is different than what we're mostly doing. We're mostly doing what we feel like when we feel like it. And good for me, but terrible for my partner, which means it ruins the relationship. And so it's teams, basically. I have to consider you and myself at the same time, or we will likely fight down the road, right? I have to think of your interests and hold my interests in mind. I have to get what I want and make sure you don't lose. Because if you lose at my cost, I'm going to pay for it. There's no way I won't. That's teams, right? And so this is interdependence, having the same things, hopefully to gain or to lose because there's parity, or we decided there's not going to be parity, but you have to understand the consequences with human adults, that when if I have less to lose than you, and I have a lot more to gain, I should probably keep my eyes open at night, because that has never worked out among equals. So it's a radical shift in our thinking, even though the idea is anything but. We've been doing things like this since the beginning of our time on the planet. Couples don't know anything about this because they're operating under their own fantasies and ideas of what a relationship should be. Often opposite ideas or different ideas, which could actually cause a big problem. So this is about growing up, taking responsibility, taking leadership, and designing something that actually is made up in our heads. Relationship doesn't exist in the physical world. Therefore, it's one of our inventions. And yet, couples aren't doing it. So at their own peril. And so it's a different orientation. It is like a team sport. And so they're training for that and training for what could possibly go wrong.
You know, what I really like about your model that I feel like the other couples models don't really do in the same way is how you bring in the evolutionary biology, how you bring in kind of, you know, the shadow side of human nature, right? The side that you've been just talking about, right? How people can be selfish, how they can try to self-preserve, how they can lie, how they can deceit, right? And that's just natural. Right? There's no shame. It's just that's what people do.
That's who we are. If you're a human primate, you're an asshole somewhere to someone.
And what I talk to my men about, and I'm curious your thoughts on this, is like, I'd say something very similar, which is the idea that, you know, humans, and I think human males in particular, are like the apex predator of planet Earth. Like, we have dominated the planet because we are super aggressive, right? And can be very cruel and are extremely exploitative. And it's like, it's more about understanding that side of us rather than either pretending it doesn't exist, right? Which I think causes more problems, right? Or leaning into it fully.
If we don't understand our nature, then we're committed to doing the same things again and again that destroy our relationships, that cause us to go to war, that cause us to get sued or sue, that causes us to, demand for a duel to the death. You've offended me, sir. Your language, that compel our kids to leave our home because they can't tolerate it anymore. It's unlivable. These things that are fundamentally human that we're all guilty of is right there, always available. And if you're not prepared, if you're not practiced, if you're not putting in guardrails and principles that hold you back from doing the wrong thing because it's the easiest, most expedient thing to do, watch out.
Well, so I want to ask you about the plight of the modern relationship. I know that's a giant topic, but when I think about that, I think of some trends, for instance, like the rise of non-monogamy, or things like the influence of social media, or things like, right, exactly, yeah, things like gender fluidity.
Yeah.
You know, I'm curious what
and
you
that
see
has
going
always
on.
been there. It's just never been named.
Yeah, never named and kind of like talked about more openly. You know, or yeah. You were not aware that other people were going through something similar, right? I think there's more connection around.
And people were invested in hiding all of that, so it wasn't in your face. And you didn't.
I'm curious, like what is going on with modern relationships? What's your take? What's your like read on the current situation?
You know, every generation reacts to the previous one, and so we think, oh God, these kids were. Well, they're reacting to us, and their kids are going to react to them, and that's the way it goes. It's a bit positive. If you think about it, it's kind of our checks and balances, because, I'm certainly too old to inherit the earth. I'm a dinosaur now. I'm on my way out. It's going to be the Gen Zs, the Gen Xs, and the Gen As, right, that are coming up. And they're all predicted to be better than us in many ways. So it doesn't matter what people call it. We're herd animals by nature that group together for safety and for security and for profit. We pair bond in herds. Yes, there are outliers, people who don't pair bond. They are poly, right? They don't want to be in a committed attachment relationship. But by far, across the globe, we tend to form dyads in the herd, and those are romantic dyads that are based on familiarity and recognition, and a certain amount of strangeness to be exciting. And that's been going on forever. And so maybe people won't get married. They're still going to hook up. Maybe people aren't going to do the traditional thing, but they're still going to need partnership. If we don't have people and we're not interacting, we go mad. We die sooner. We get sick sooner. We're not built for that. So, like it or not, we need people. And everything we do is better with people if the conditions are right and we're working well together. So it's not the people, it's how they're going to do business with each other. The manner in which they're going to do business is the make or break of things, right? It has to be fair, just, and mutually sensitive, or it will fray eventually.
Yeah. And I'm also hearing like consciously talked about, like negotiated. Because I think to your point earlier, right, people are living in fantasy where they just think that, oh, everyone's like me, right? Or everyone's like my mother, or everyone's like my father, or whatever it is, right? They don't really check their assumptions.
We have no idea how different people are. In fact, I've never lived outside of my head, and for the most part, I don't think I ever will, at least in my lifetime. You're a different animal than me. The idea that you and I could ever be exactly on the same page is a fantasy. We can only approximate each other, which is good enough. But mostly, we're not understanding what it's like for the other person to be an audience to us, what our voice sounds like, what our manners appear to like, what our facial expressions are like, our word choices like. This is why we make it very clear in a relationship that you want to keep. If your partner feels hurt by something they say you did, you better apologize and fix it without explanation, or you lose the relationship, right? You start to. It's the idea you can be right or you can be in a relationship. It's inherently unfriendly. What we do is, I'm right, you're wrong. My reality is correct, yours is not. And this is the hill we die on, and then we lose our relationships and regret them on our deathbed, which is real fun. I'm pitching relationship first over self, right? Because self is embedded into the relationship as autonomous people working together.
And like you're saying, that is alien, that is foreign to like our human nature, right? I think that takes training. It takes some level of like, I don't know, transcendent spiritual bonding, right? Like it takes like some power beyond yourself to really want to do that. So I'm curious, like, how do you get people to be motivated to want to make things better?
Nice thing is the people I see are suffering. So I have leverage.
They already know what they're doing isn't working.
Yeah, if they came in and say, hey, we're happy to just came here to shoot the breeze, that's fine. But the leverage I have is the pain people are in. And if they're not in pain, then it's my job to find the pain. Otherwise, there's no interest, there's no will to do anything, because nobody wants to change anything, right? I want you to change, and I want to stay the same. And so, suffering is the great motivator for insight, for wisdom, for learning, because without pain, without regret of making errors, we don't learn. And so it's a necessary condition. But that's my leverage point. To the degree they have the will to do what I'm prescribing, that's a whole different matter. And I can't measure that or know that until the end result. They leave, they quit. or they just won't do anything. They won't improve. And that's a sign that they're just not going to use what is a lot of will to do what is counterintuitive for us. Energy conservation, the biological law of energy conservation, dictates that we do the least amount necessary on a daily basis. We were conserving energy to do what we want to do what we have to do, and to deal with something that's novel, that excites us. Other than that, we relegate everything new to old, and we automate it, including our partners, including our kids, which leads to not paying attention, not listening, not courting any longer if we're lovers, dropping our formalities, making huge assumptions that we're family, which we're not, and we're not living life. We're not appreciating. We're not actually seeing our person. We are relying on actually a picture that we hold in our minds for weeks and months of our person, but we don't really look. And we're robbed here, of all these great neuropeptides and drugs that we could be pumping through our brain and our bodies together by hacking those systems as we did when we first met. But this lulls us into thinking, I don't have time and I don't have to do that. I'm not curious anymore. I think I know you. That's another force that we're all up against. It works for survival. Yeah, it does not work for love.
Like you make these heuristics, you make these holograms, right? And then all of a sudden you're interacting in like a matrix, right? You're not actually in reality. Curious from here, you have a long career, right? Like what issues are people struggling with now? And have they changed over time? Or do you feel like there's still just kind of these core things that get in the way of having these, more robust relationships?
Nothing has changed in our species. Remarkably, we have not evolved.
The hardware is still old, right?
Mostly because we're so intelligent, we can keep reinventing ourselves and manifest things out of nothing because of our imagination. The only only animal that can do that. So we haven't changed. We live in, I think, a world that is far more demanding in terms of data, in terms of news, in terms of social media. You mentioned, again, everything has a feature and a bug, right? The features, of course, of social media is that we connect to people and we're able to share information. The bug is siloing and propaganda and being cruel and getting a reward for tearing people down in comments. We get a dopamine reward for that. And so it's not our best, and it causes all these problems. But that's everything we've invented. Everything we've invented has a dark side. And you can be sure human beings will take advantage of it right away, whether it's fetish, sexual entertainment, political reasons, whatever, or defense, the atom bomb. Now, all these things have both sides, and yet, just like our development, we often discover things before we're emotionally ready to understand and handle them responsibly. That's just like how the trajectory of kids and as their brain is developing. And so it is what it is. It's the human condition. We've always been this way. I think people are more fearful that the country that once was is coming undone. That who we are, our identity as Americans and our identity in the world is radically shifting. We're now seen as the evil empire was seen. We're seen as the bullies in the room. And it's a hard look. It's a hard thing. Racism has gone up. Anti-Semitism, you name it. We otherize across the board. We see this with ICE. We see this with the current administration. So I think people are existentially fearful all day, every day about what's going to happen next. Then there's global warming. Then there's still the nuclear issue, right? That doesn't go away. And so, there's a lot more bearing on us. In the 1500s, all we had to do was worry about dying from the Black Plague, which, by the way, was a big thing. So, it's always been a dangerous world. It's always been one where, are we safe? And for how long? But again, we've always found shelter in our relationships. We've always found solace in our relationships if we go to them, if we nourish them. That's all we've got, really, to soothe that existential constant drone, fear, is we can hold hands in hell together. That's great. Right? We can make our relationship unlike the rest of the world by design and agreement. And if we can do that, why wouldn't we? If the consequences are what they are. And so that's what I am pitching is you can't control the world. You can do what you can, but you can control your bubble, your couple bubble, your couple system, and insulate yourselves, not by ignoring things, but by protecting each other at all times, having each other's backs, just like you would in the military or cop car partners or in a rock and roll band, or on stage as an actor with a troupe. It's one for all for one. And if you're not doing that, you're probably going to get kicked out because you're messing with people's purpose and vision.
I want to zoom in on that a bit about, how to support each other in a relationship and relational needs. Because when I talk to a lot of my guys and, work with some of the population guys that are coming to therapy, so they're struggling, right? But they often either shrink all the needs down to just sex. It's like, okay, if I'm not having sex, then my relationship is not good, right? Or a lot of times they feel unappreciated. They feel like they're just like, a paycheck and a taxi driver, so there's not that much interplay, right? There's not that much exchange in many of these relationships that I see. And I think you're advocating for something that's much more dynamic.
If the default is that, I work for sex, it's sex, that would be the deal breaker if you're not wanting to have sex with me at the amount of times I want, then you're out. Well, that is penny wise, pound foolish, because that ain't going to stay. That's not going to be possible to maintain libido, your performance, because of physicality, aging, medications, surgeries, hormones, all sorts of things, including your attitude, right? If sex is performative, if there's any coercion at all in either person's mind, that's a bummer. And why do it, right? Sex is for pleasure, but mutual pleasure. And hopefully it's to get to know each other better. And it's not just putting bags over your head, and it could be anybody. So a lot of men and women who put a lot of emphasis in eroticism and sex turn out to have many times, not all the time, be in the distancing group of attachment insecurity. They are often auto-regulating in making love and other things too, where they're basically having sex with themselves. They're not interactive. They're not interactively regulating each other. They're not curious. They're not actually paying attention moment by moment. They're not improvising. It's rote. And so, I question that as something that sustains. It doesn't. In fact, people can become existentially lonely if that's all they're doing. But not so if they stay curious, if they're always wanting to know the other person, as they're spending a lot of time together. Time equals influence, right? The more time you and I spend together, the more we influence each other, and we're not likely to go off in different directions. Couples that are in the distancing group often silo. They're often dividing and conquering. They opt out of things that they don't want to do instead of working to get each other on board by bargaining and negotiating. And so they drift and they lose that loving feeling and they get influenced by outside forces, no longer together. And so you kind of have to look again at design. If men feel that way, it's a design issue. Design it with your partner, right? Fix it. That if I'm just seen or feel like I'm just seen as a tool, that's a design problem. I'm going to go to my partner and say that neither of us should do that. Neither of us should feel that. So let's build something in that keeps us ever from feeling that, giving each other permission to enforce this. So if anyone slips into that feeling, the other person has to pay attention and fix it right away. Yeah, it's doable. So it is what you say it is. Relationships don't exist except in our heads. If the relationship is this, then it's this. If the relationship is fragile, then it's fragile. If the relationship is one where I have to do what I'm told and I cannot speak up, then that's the way it's going to be. People have to understand that they're the inventors, the architects, and if they're not doing that, then it's likely their family of origin in their heads that are doing it, and that's lazy.
That's lazy, yeah, and often never works out. You've mentioned enforcing, right? I'm curious what that looks like because, like no treaty matters if it doesn't have teeth.
Think of governance as you and I are equals, right? We're adults. This is not an asymmetric relationship, right? Unless I'm your employer, or I'm your sergeant in the army. So being equals, we can't govern without first agreeing that which we are trying to avoid or trying to actually make happen, right? We have the agreement, we both buy into the purpose of this, right? We think of it as good, best, or right. But we vet it to make sure that we selfishly want this. It can't be for the other person, it has to be for me. And then we give each other permission to enforce. The enforcement is part of collaboration, right? The other person has to cooperate when the principle is enforced, reminded, cued. They just have to cooperate immediately. That's governance. You're not my boss any more than I'm your boss, but we can boss each other based on previous agreement and permission to do that. We're not each other's parents, but we're each other's minders, and we're both responsible for the state of the union. And therefore, if you step out of line, we have measures. You just got to cooperate. And if you don't, if we've done this properly, if we've really learned how to make proper agreements in the right way, and you can forget, we're reflexive and automatic, but when reminded, you carry on, you're done.
Then there's a real consequence, right?
Yeah, you're done because you're telling me I will not be governed by you. And if that's true, neither of us can be saved.
Yeah.
Can't work.
Yeah. I think that's a really key point, right? And I'm hearing that it takes like a level of humility and, like you're saying, commitment to a greater vision. Really like
Character.
Going beyond yourself. Yeah. Character.
Character is believing in something that you're going to hold to, even if you don't feel like it at the time. You're still going to stick to your guns when you're terrified. You're not going to give up. You're still going to do the right thing, even though it's the hardest thing to do, right? That's character, and that's a purpose-centered life, which is actually a good life. It's a cut above what most of us are doing. And so if you want a great life together, if you want the relationship to be awesome, build it and respect the idea of governance and do not mess with it, because your lives are at stake, literally. People don't think of that, but they are. Your lives are at stake, your health, your attention, your ability to perform for other people, be good parents, your ability to be resourced. And a well-working team, everything's easier. Everything's better than it would be if I were alone.
Listeners, as you're hearing Dr. Tatkin talk, it's like, this is honor. I say on this podcast, what differentiates a boy from a man is that a man takes responsibility for his life. And I think that's what you're advocating for, is like, this is your life. You're in control. Act like it. There's no cavalry coming, right? Like there's no one that's going to magically change you. If you want it, you have to make it happen.
And in the world of secure functioning, I tell people, this is not about either of you changing who you are, that you don't get into a relationship to be changed. It's simply changing how you do business. It has to be practiced and understood under stress, that I have to always be aware of you at the same time I'm aware of me. I have to make sure you don't lose, just like I have to make sure I won't lose. So how do we both win? by being clever. If we're confined to good for me, good for you, or go home, we'll figure out. People always do. If we think we have other options, then we won't. You can prove that over and over again, and it's been proven. So, if we're confined to being good for you, good for me, yeah, it's a little more effort up front, but it prevents downstream problems that will get us looking back and having to litigate something I felt was unfair or hurtful, and you didn't fix it. So it's being an adult. It's growing up. It's prevention, thinking ahead, predicting what could go wrong, and planning together for it. It's taking the bull by the horns. The two of you, as a powerful team, nobody fucks with us, and we're really good at this. Right? We're really good at making sure we're good first. We're going to be fine first, and then we think of other people. Because if we're not happy, if we're not working well together, everything and everyone suffers.
Well, so I'm curious, a little bit of a pivot, but I know since you're up to date on those research.
And this is hard to see, by the way. I say it as if it's easy.
Oh, yeah, I know. It's like it's years, decades, lifelong journey. But I'm curious, just like what from the current research, are there neurobiological differences between men and women? And I know there's a nature versus nurture argument. I know there's gender fluidity. Like, I think it's something that is being re-examined constantly. But I'm curious, like in the most up-to-date literature, like, are we different? And if so, how? Or are all humans act the same?
Well, we're all different, and yet we're all the same in terms of our potential behavior. Pathology is just an amplification of the human condition. We too could hear voices if we do enough cocaine. We too can act like a crazy person of borderline personality disorder if we're in enough physical pain and we're feeling helpless in a hospital with doctors we deem as not caring. We're not pleasant. And so this is about the human condition, but there are differences between the male and female brain. It's been overblown over the years, and it just has to do with the structure, the building out of certain structures, because largely not just because of hormones and testicles or ovaries. It is the way we treat and interact with girls as opposed to boys that is more relational. It tends to be more emotionally based. But again, women's brains tend to be more balanced on the left and right and vertically. They're much better at holding relationships together on the whole than men. Men are very good at protecting the realm and coming and take action to protect their family. Women are very good at keeping their family close when there's danger. And so voices are a problem to kids and to partners because it is, we think, due to evolution, is supposed to send danger away, to send predators away, to give them warning, right? A big booming voice. And so often it's the father's voice that says, stop, and the kids will stop. The mother's voice is higher pitched and is good for rallying people in as a siren, right? And that's a difference, it seems, evolutionary wise. Arousal system. Men are quickly aroused and stay aroused longer than women. Men tend to have less interoceptive awareness of body sensations, their bodies, and so on. Men are more likely to be alexithymic, not know what I feel. I give one word to everything. A lot of this is in our heads because we feel like we deserve whatever the feminine archetype that we believe in based on our family of origin and what we grew up with, that feminine energy should be there in my mate, as if that's the single most important thing. And it's not. It's partnership. It's teamwork. It is our differences that is our superpower if we accept them as they are and make use of them. My wife is my other brain. I wouldn't be doing this if not for her, and she knows this. She would say the same. She can think in ways I can't. I'm very smart in a very particular area. I am fucking stupid everywhere else. No, I am.
I think because I am too. I get it.
Almost to the point of savant, and neurodivergence. But she is a linear and I'm circular. I'm a good creator. She's a good get it done and get it done on time. And so together we're awesome.
Yes. And it goes back to your team mode, right? It's like the idea of like, yeah, it's okay to have different roles, to have different domains, different places where you excel, as long as, again, it's negotiated, understood, and agreed upon and enforced.
It naturally sorts if you let it. But here's the problem. Because it's in our DNA to otherize anyone who's too familiar to ignore and too different to get along with, we get rid of them. We otherize them. And therein lies the problem. Energy conservation dictates we do the least amount necessary. That includes always looking to where we disagree and where you and I are different. That's low-hanging fruit. That's lazy. Real people who are consensus makers bring people together based on a common purpose. Always look to where they agree and where they're the same, which we all can do. We just don't. We just don't. And to our own, unhappiness. And so this otherizing thing should not be dismissed as not me. Everyone does it. Social media is the great place where people are doing it all the time, anonymously, and getting a reward for it, dopamine-wise. So we have to, really accept each other as is, understanding that there's nothing more difficult on the planet than another person, that all people are annoying, a pain in the ass, and a burden, myself included, right? There is no low maintenance person that is going to stay that way up close over time. Not possible. And so if you really find that too difficult, that's when you get a dog. Dogs are too difficult, that's when you get a plant. But you're not going to be happy because we need people.
Well, so I have another question. This might be a follow-up episode at some point, but I'm curious, you've written a book, Baby Bomb, right, about families. So I'm curious, like, of course, we know a lot about couples, but how does this apply to families where there is, developmental differences, right, in brains, as well as power structures, right? Like it certainly gets more complicated.
All sorts of things. That's why the two heads of household, the two people at the top of the food chain, the couple, right, not the kids, the couple, they're responsible for the architecture. They're responsible for the running of everything. And if they're not doing that, then they're the problem. What was your question again?
Oh, just how do these things apply with children? How would you take this model and turn to a family versus a couple?
So Baby Bomb came about when my colleague was pregnant with her first child. And she was also a student once upon a time of mine. And she knew that the couple would be most threatened, we talked about forever, most threatened when going from dyads to triads, right? Now we're having a new person come in who is going to be a focus, and primarily a focus of the primary attachment figure. It's usually mother, not always. And that person is bound biologically to focus all their attention on the infant. That creates a ripe area for jealousy, a ripe area for being displaced by the non-primary, at that moment, parent. Could be male or female, doesn't really matter. The secondary parent could feel dropped as a partner for a lot of reasons. Overtouch, hormones, postmortem, all sorts of preoccupation, all sorts of things. If they're not prepared to stay a couple and to do the things that remain a couple first, they're going to come apart at the seams, likely. And so this was a prophylactic prevention, a heads up, not on the baby, but on the couple system. You must remain a couple in this way to avoid any problems downstream. Otherwise, it's going to be an issue, right? Going from 2s to 3s. And sometimes the second baby is the one that causes it.
Because at that point, it can become unmanageable.
Yeah, one wants one and the other one doesn't, and then suddenly we're pregnant. So these are structural problems that affect everybody. And that's why we wanted to, say, hey, plan. ahead. Everything in my mind is prevention, because we're able to predict, plan, and prepare for what is likely to happen. We just don't.
We just don't. And then we get surprised when it hits.
Yeah. Like
I never saw that coming.
What'd you expect? And then we do it again and again.
Yeah. Same thing, but harder, right? That's very
we don't learn. Hey, let's do a postmortem. Let's not do that again. Let's put something in place to keep either of us from doing that. Yeah, people don't do that. In medicine, we do that. In sciences, and almost other areas where learning from mistakes is vital to going forward, in a business, anything else. But couples don't, because they don't feel they should have to do.
Yeah, and I think there's a narrative that it should all be natural, whatever that means, right? Like that you should just know how to do this out the gate, and you don't. And if you have to work at it, then you're failing, or you've already failed if it's efforting, which is a crazy delusion, right? I mean, it's just not true at all.
My wife and I were naturals, but make no mistake, that would only work until load bearing increased. As soon as load bearing increased, I've never seen couples that are naturals survive that without the wheels coming off, because they're unprepared. They're only prepared for a certain amount of load, a certain amount of stress. Well, life isn't that way. It can be increasingly complex, with a lot of mouths to feed and worry about, with a lot of pressures and a lot of worries and concerns. If they're not practiced and really good as a team for rainy days and for storms, they're screwed. And that's a fantasy that we're just naturals. And, I would never do that. It's a lie. That's not true. You would never do that. I'm naive, because how do I know that? If you can do it, you'll probably do it. And let's make sure neither of us can.
Like you said, like design the system so that doesn't happen.
Don't assume that people do bad shit. If the opportunity arrives, we are those animals. Anyone who thinks they're not is deluding themselves. They have not yet reached a situation where they are desperate, where they are terrified, where they are unhappy, and something is dangling in front of them. And so this is about being smart, right? Not assuming anything. That's safety. How you remain safe.
Well, so Stan, I've really enjoyed this. I feel like we could keep going, but we are nearing the end here. So I'm curious, if someone is listening to this conversation and they're inspired by what they're hearing, what's something that they can do right away? Whether it's a book, a resource, a conversation with their partner, an introspective question, like how can they make this real?
Remember that if you're a couple, you have to define what you are and who you're going to be, what role you're going to play, or you will fight. Everybody will. Without a shared purpose, at least one, why we are, and a vision. We want to win. We want to make money. We want to get the gold in the Olympics. We want to succeed. We want to get the record deal, whatever it is. Without that, people will pick at each other and fragment. It's happening all over the world today. It's happened throughout history. Look at the country. There is no longer a powerful shared purpose or vision. And the ones we had turn out to be not true for a lot of people. All people are equal. No, they're not. If you're rich, you're definitely, above and beyond and entitled. The American dream, no, not so fast. That's crushed. And what happens when people discover that there is no binding purpose and vision? They tribalize. There's civil war. It's always happened that way. So don't take for granted this idea of creating an architecture, leaving no stone unturned, but start with locking down the safety and security system. Anywhere either of you could be vulnerable to each other or to the outside world, you want to lock down by thinking it through, having a plan and governance, permission to enforce. Otherwise, if that's not intact, you're not going to take off. You can't enjoy life. You can't be happy. You can't feel sexual. You can't do any of this because all your resources are being taken up with safety and security in a way that you have no idea is keeping you from doing great things. Design, take it serious, sit down, and it's fun from scratch. You're city planners, You're building a culture from the ground up, not based on what somebody else does.
And is there anything from your organization, like a workbook or a template or something that can help guide a couple through this that you'd recommend to just provide some structure to the structure building?
We sadly, embarrassingly, we need a workbook. We did. My wife and I just came out with a first product, a video product called the Win-Win Couple, and this is a how-to detail. We hired actors. There's a whole thing on the do's and don'ts at managing stress and still getting things accomplished. Right? How to handle stress, conflict, without becoming adversarial. That is harder than you think. And it takes knowledge, preparation, and understanding of how people actually work, not how you wish they would, how we actually work. This is about the way the real world works. And we're hoping that really will take care of a lot of problems. The problem, basically, of threat.
And listeners will have a link to that in the show notes if you want to check out the Win-Win Couple. Yeah, Dr. Tatkin, loved having you on the show. If you want to learn more about you, where can they find you online?
All that you have to do is go to the PACT, P-A-C-T, institute.com. The PACTinstitute.com. They can find me there, Stan at the PACT Institute. If you're a mental health professional, we train all over the world. That's how this started, as training for therapists. It is a complicated, big commitment, though. And we do a couple workshops, my wife and I, throughout the year. One is in progress now. Everyone benefits from that. And we do a couple retreats once a year, 5-star retreats. This year, coming up, we're doing the Mekong Delta. Oh, this camera. I have 3 cameras. The Mekong Delta. Only 12 couples this time, so it's going to be intimate. It's on a barge, 5-star barge, though. When I say 5-star, I mean the couple that always arranges this always goes for the amazing. And we'll be visiting also Vietnam and Cambodia. So sign up there. At least it'll be a link of where to sign up, because it's not us. It's actually this other couple that we work with.
That sounds amazing. Yeah, that's like a bucket list, truly transformative experience.
We've never had a complaint, when all is said and done, and people complain during, but nobody has ever said this was not anything other than a life-changing event where people get very tight and they stay in contact with each other. And so groups pull people faster together. So that's it.
Fantastic. And yeah, listeners will have a link to all that kind of stuff in our bio in the show notes. So Dr. Tatkin, thank you again for coming on the show.
And Mark, you're wonderful. I've taken to you already. Just the way you talk in your spirit. Anyway, so maybe we can talk just as friends at some point after this.
100%. Yeah, I appreciate that. So listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week in an episode of the Men's Therapy Podcast. As you know, this is part of Men's Therapy Online. You can check us all out at menstherapy.online. We have so much content. We got blogs, we got 400 podcast episodes, and we're trying to build is we have a Slack channel that's all HIPAA compliant, encrypted, protected. It's a chat room. We're about 300 men right now. We want to get to 1,000 by the end of the year. So join. It's totally free. It's a place to talk with other guys that are going through similar things, to get support, chat with me, chat with my other providers. And we're always posting stuff around self-help, self-improvement, and asking you the tough questions. So check us out at menstherapy.online. And then any community. And that's what we're trying to provide, is like connection and community with other good men. So thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.